Special council, city council meeting for the city of Joliet, December 26th, 2019. Lucy, I'm home. So everybody was waiting for me to get back, so I'm home. Pauline, would you call the roll, please?
Thank you. Mayor Odekirk?
Here.
Councilman Dickinson?
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Here.
Councilman Hug? Absent. Councilman Morris?
Here.
Councilman Mudrin?
Here.
Councilwoman Quillman? Absent. Councilwoman Reardon?
Here.
Councilman Turk.
Here.
Next, we have citizens to be heard on agenda items. Is there, I've got a list of, before I start, opening it up to the general public here. Mary Beth Gannon is the first person who signed up.
Mary Beth Gannon, 903 Western Avenue. You know, ever since I found out you wanted to hurt us with your tax increases, I've taken the time to talk to people who live in each of your districts, many of them. And you know what they all said? Don't increase my taxes. They don't want these tax hikes, and more importantly, they can't afford them. I don't know what you folks are thinking, but nobody can afford them. Mr. Jones, you sit here smug week after week, looking down at us. You're probably laughing right now about these tax hikes because you don't even live here. You insisted on a new contract for a job you were already required to do. And these fools went ahead and approved it. We cannot afford these tax hikes. You can say it's $10 here, $7 there, 4 cents here, 4 cents there. But when you add it up and you add in county increases, state increases, that's an extra $1,000 a year. People in this town cannot afford an extra $1,000 a year. That makes a difference between somebody buying medication, somebody paying their utility bills. You know, this is not monopoly money. I have come to these meetings week after week, and I see you making poor decisions that hurt the taxpayers. You know, giving him a special contract, getting rid of Marty Shanahan. Marty, who would have made cuts and not tax increases. You know, let's get rid of the person who had some fiscal sense. Yeah, that really makes sense. You know, and Mr. Dickinson, you go on and on about how you answer your phone all the time. Well, ring, ring, ring. I'm calling you now. The taxpayers are calling you. You sit here meeting after meeting saying nothing. Well, we are calling you now. We don't want you raising our taxes. Or do you only answer calls for potholes and cats stuck in trees? You want us to make sacrifices. Where are your sacrifices? You folks have life insurance here. You have benefits here. I'm sorry, not life insurance, but you have regular health insurance. All of you have day jobs. You don't need health insurance on my dime and her dime and his dime and so on. All I know is if I were sitting up there right now, I wouldn't take that money. And I sure as heck would never increase someone's taxes. Thank you.
Kathy Spieler.
Good evening. I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. Miss Gavin, happy birthday to you. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so tonight it's talk about tax time. And Betty, I have to start with you because I'm hearing that you're the deciding vote. So I'm going to appeal to you because when it was during campaign time, I reached out to you and I said, Betty, I want to help you. And a lot of people said, well, what are you doing helping Betty campaign? You're in District 5. And I said, you know what? Betty is going to be a voice for the people, for the poor, disabled, elderly, all the people that need help. So I need you to stick to that tonight and not raise our taxes, because I believe in you, and I believe that you're going to reach out and help us by voting no. And I'm going to thank you for that ahead of time. Okay, the library is a very nice place to study. And for $10 a person, it doesn't seem like a lot, but as Mary Beth stated, we're looking more like $1,000 per household when you add it all together. Someone else has mentioned that waste management, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is going to go up $720. Is that per month or per year? Does anyone know? Yeah, per year. Okay. So now we're up to $1,720. Again, doesn't seem like a lot, but it kind of does to people, like single moms that are out there working and, they might need gas for their car or money for a babysitter. Elderly people are going to be choosing between medications and food or other things that they need. And again, this is not just it because we've got the gas tax that they want to put on top of it. So it just seems like an awful lot. And I'm not only going to appeal to you, Betty, but also to the rest of the council has voted yes to this the other day. I'd like to see you reverse your votes because especially council at large, Mike and Don, your friends, and I like you, but you also represent the poor of this city too. So you have to think about that when you're making these decisions. And even Sherry and Pat, I know that you represent a little bit more affluent areas, but there are people from your areas here to speak tonight too. And Terry, thank you for your no, and Larry and Mayor, of course. I also believe that if the mayor was able to keep our taxes down for the last 4 years, and last year we bought $8 million worth of new fleet for the city, is that correct?
No, I think about 3.5 million, 4 million last
Okay.
year.
But we were able to do that and not raise taxes.
Correct.
So there has to be a way that we could maybe purchase these fleets a little bit at a time and just keep our taxes down. So I'm appealing to all of you tonight, and I'd like you to consider what I'm saying. Thank you.
Next, I have Audrey Sako.
Audrey Secco, 205 Crabapple Court. I actually have some questions, and of course I understand you don't have to answer them, but I'm going to present them to you. How long ago was this budget put together, and how did it happen? Did you just all make a wish list and then turn it over to him to put it together? Or did someone just write it and say, here, this is what you want to ask for? And how long have you worked on this budget between you? And have you had a lot of serious meetings among yourselves to try to come to a compromise instead of it coming down to this? And now I'm going to talk about the gas tax. And I'm not singling you out personally, Sherry. Earlier in the year, Sherry Reardon wanted a penny a gallon gas tax. That raised everybody's hackles. It was all over the Herald News, the local radio, the Patch, the social media. Next meeting, and Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, you explained that the city vehicles are bought, how the city vehicles are bought and paid for, where the money comes from, how the city staggers their purchases over a period of years. And I believe you said that we don't need a penny tax to cover the cost of these vehicles. Well, which is it? First, the mayor says we don't need that penny tax, and now Jones says that we need a 4-cent tax. Has anybody made him explain it? I was here the other night for his half answer and dancing around the subject, but where's the numbers to back this up for this needed gas tax? Has he shown you numbers? What happened in 5 months to warrant a 4-cent gas tax when 5 months ago we didn't need a penny gas tax? And you people are going to vote on this? Yes? The library. I use the library regularly, and I'm all for improvements and upgrades within reason. I get the impression the library wants it all and there's no compromise. Who here personally hasn't wanted to buy something extravagant for themselves that they couldn't afford? Normal, level-headed people, they either reconsider how many bells and whistles you can do without and make adjustments, or you buy the basics and add on in later on. I don't fault the library for asking for everything at once, but seriously, have you and them forgot about negotiating for something more reasonable? Maybe you need to remind them that the sky isn't the limit with our tax dollars, and don't make this library vote the second coming of Santa Claus. And finally, when you vote tonight, use your conscience. I understand some on the council don't like the proposed budget but are going to vote for it anyways. Why? You are in the position to change it before it passes. That's your job. I hope we're not going to hear any excuses like, well, I voted for this because I just want this to be over, or we're running out of time. No, you have 5 days yet. Reconsider it. Remember, you asked for this job. You made the commitment to the residents and voters to do what's right for Joliet. And we, the residents, don't owe you anything, but you owe us honesty and fairness. Thank you for letting me speak, and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Florence Basie.
I don't have a speech. My name is Florence Basie. I live at 624 Catherine Street. I want to be able to retire and stay here. And it looks like we're faced with a lot of money coming out of our pockets. I fear for that. And next time I show up, I'll know what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thomas Basie? Nope, okay. Gabby Shanahan?
Gabriella Shanahan, 8005 Expedition Street, Joliet. Mayor and City Council, I am asking you to vote no to the proposed 2020 budget. This time next year, I hope to be representing Joliet's Kendall County area constituents, so I am expressing my displeasure regarding this budget. There are too many fee increases and taxes that our community can't afford. According to Census.gov, Joliet's median income is $67,000 with an almost 12% poverty rate. Betty Gavin should vote no for this budget because it is her district that is economically fragile and would hurt the most from these taxes and fees. Most of these proposed taxes and fees considered are regressive. The IRS defines a regressive tax as a tax regardless of income level. An individual pays the same dollar amount. By taking a closer look, it is easy to see that such taxes cause lower income people to pay a larger share of their income than the wealthier people pay. Those with high incomes experience a smaller burden of taxation than those with the lower incomes. Many of you sit up here and claim to be pro-business. In a 2019 candidate interview, Pat Mudrin has stated that he has a pro-business voting record. If he votes for this budget, I would have to disagree with that. Increased fees and taxes are anti-business, especially anti-small local business. By increasing taxes and fees, you are stifling current business and are deterring future business from the area. Additionally, Pat Mudrin stated in his 2019 candidate interview that there are areas that we could trim the budget. So, Pat, I ask you a question. What has changed? Why aren't we trimming fat from the budget that needs to be done? Rather than increase taxes, I think we should all sit down and think of ways to enhance revenue not done on the backs of constituents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have Edward Secco.
Good evening. I thought when I retired I'd get through with doing this kind of thing, but it seems like it just carries on. And after witnessing the first budget vote, where I have to ask, were any budget discussions between Jones and the council held before that vote? And why was that vote put off until there was so little time left in this year? There also has been no mention of expected resident dollar costs. And, I've heard numbers thrown around at $500 a year, $1,000 a year, $8 for the library. But what's it really going to cost the average citizen? All these things should have been considered before the vote. Also, before that budget vote, Jones mentioned in a newspaper article wanting the vote postponed until Councilperson Gavin got back because his budget probably wouldn't pass without her, and it only got 4 out of the 5 votes that were needed to pass. After a new vote was scheduled, Councilperson Hug asked Jones if he was going to rework his budget. Jones said, no, this is pretty much it. Also per Hug, the library person he talked to wouldn't talk about library budget. Were they both so sure that the same budget will get the 5th vote now? I thought council worked independently to represent the residents of the city. It seems to me and many others that there is a clear council division. Joliet newspapers and the Joliet social media make comment on it, referencing the nickname of the 5 members of the one group and the 4 members of the other group. Even this morning in the Patch, I read an article about this very meeting, and one of the things that they referenced in that article was the fact that Mayor Odekirk worked to help Councilperson Gavin get elected. Then after she got elected, she changed her allegiance over to Councilperson Mudron. How that works, I don't know. I do know, though, that time is short. Will the budget get passed with an excuse of, I don't like it, but we have to have a budget passed before the end of the year? I encourage Council and Jones to work together for the good of us all. There is time left. The voters are definitely starting to wake up, and being stuck with a budget as unpopular as this one, raising their taxes in turmoil like this, makes a good alarm clock. Thank you all.
Next, I have Kathleen Maychuk.
Good evening. I'm Kathleen Maychek, and I live at 501 Palladium Drive West in Joliet. And basically, I just want to say that I think you need to cut the fat on the budget, maybe table the vote until you can work out a better budget so it isn't burdening the taxpayers so much. Because unlike many people, if you're living on a fixed income, you're not going to be able to afford much more. Your money's already accounted for. And it's just too much for the people to take at this point. So please reconsider the budget or table the vote until it can be worked out so it isn't so burdening upon us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on an agenda item?
All right, good evening. I'm Megan Millen, Executive Director of Joliet Public Library. In recent weeks and tonight, much has been said about Project Burnham, and there are just a couple of points I would like to officially correct the record on. We are asking the city for $6.5 million, not $10.5 million. The library is putting $4 million that we have saved over the years into this project. We are not allowed to accumulate enough in our fund balance to pay for the entire project. It is necessary to ask the city to bond the rest. Second, as a municipal library in a home rule community such as Joliet, we do not have the statutory authority to go to referendum. Our only appropriate mechanism for a capital improvement project is through city council, and that's why we're here. We're not a separate taxing body, like the Park District, for example. And third, the cost of the project will be approximately $8 a year or 66 cents a month for the average Joliet homeowner with a $200,000 house. Because it is based on individual EAV, those that can afford it the least will pay the least. But what they will get in return is immeasurable. Beyond these basic facts, I've been hearing a lot about the haves and the have-nots in our community. I feel like now is a good time to remind everyone listening that public libraries are here for everyone, but are especially here as a lifeline to those with the greatest financial need. A careful observer at the Ottawa Street branch would notice the mother bringing her toddler to the Spanish story time. She may not fully grasp English yet, but the library's inclusivity allows her to enrich her child's life and meet other parents like herself. A careful observer would notice the junior high girl using our computer to do her science research paper. Her family can't afford the internet at home. A careful observer would notice the man who was recently laid off, using our computers and resources to construct his first resume in 30 years. They'd notice the woman with the recent scary diagnosis, who's turned to our reference staff on where to look for accurate answers. They'd notice the couple who cannot afford an attorney, but needs to use the library's resources to write their own wills. They'd notice the people who come to us out of necessity, and because we offer them information, access, and assistance. These are the people who will benefit from Project Burnham. Your constituents, our citizens. The library is bridging the digital divide, and we are an equalizer for everyone. The public library is and always has been a beacon of hope to all who need it. And for that reason, I proudly ask you to support this worthy project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Emmy Ostrom. I live at 913 Grand Boulevard. That's in Terry's bailiwick. I've been observing this board for a number of years. I can remember, as I mentioned, I think in the elevator last week, I've been coming to watch council meetings for a long time. I can remember coming with the League of Women Voters as an observer and watching you guys. It's been very interesting and very informative. And I'm very pleased that everybody's here tonight. That's wonderful. So you will all have an opportunity to give your own views. I would also tell you that I've been using the library for a number of years. My mother built our house, by the way. I'm living in the house I came to as a baby. So I'm very familiar with our district. There are a lot of different areas of income in our district. I know that is true. But at the same time, we must also take care of those numbers of different incomes in our district. It's only fair. There are a lot of people who don't have internet access. There are a lot of kids that have to come down to the library to use a computer to finish their schoolwork, and this is important. There are a lot of adults that have to go to the library to find a way to make a job work for them or to find a job. We have that ability too. We have a lot of small businesses that use our library. They use it for their methods of advertising. Our new technological department does wonders with small business and the things that they can accomplish in marketing. So we at the library cover a number of different areas that are met by a number of different age classifications in our community. And that's wonderful. And I thank God that there was a library for me. I remember going as a little girl down there, and I would like to see the library still. It was a pretty progressive library for its time, but now as time is advancing and there are more technologies coming, we really need to engage in that in order to bring our library up to the speed it really deserves for a city of Joliet, which I think is a very wonderful city in the state of Illinois. I think we're way above many, many, many of them. So let's keep being the leaders, not the followers. Let's keep having vision for the future. Let's keep having those kids grow up with all the access to the technology and to the great areas of knowledge that our library can provide for them. Thank God we had brilliant city fathers and mothers a long time ago that was able to help me. And thank God we have a group of people here who will vote, I think, in our best interests, certainly in the interests of the futures to come in Joliet. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody. Good evening. This is reminds me of Washington, D.C. You know, leaders didn't get what they wanted, and they got somebody else, and all they're gonna do is make turmoil for that person for the next 4 years. I congratulate you on putting together a budget, sir, and holding tight. City manager's job is to make a budget, city council's job is to set policy. I happened to listen to the tapes of those last 2 meetings because I was out of town, and I've kind of found it humorous to a little bit because everybody had some ideas up there that were opposed to the budget, but not one person made a motion. It's real simple. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to decrease the gas tax from 4 cents to 3 cents, etc. Second, yay, nay, real simple. Not one person made a motion on anything they disliked. But yet they want to tear this man apart for putting together a budget, all different type of reasons and so on. The delay, you didn't tell us, you didn't ask us for your opinion, yada, yada, yada. Last 3 years out of the 4, the city has lost money. It's time somebody stops kicking the can down the road and makes some tough decisions. The parking garage has been complained about for 4 years. What they're going to do, we want to turn it over. We want to get rid of the union guy. We want to get the thing fixed. It's falling apart. The elevator don't work. Finally, the motel tax come in. And I agree with you, Councilwoman. It's oversaturation of motels in Joliet. That's why they have a problem staffing motels. I would tend to agree with that position. But everybody wants to tax truckers going through town for extra gas, but you don't want to tax the people going through town for a motel tax. It would benefit the city of Joliet and not have to worry about those things. Actually, a motel tax was supposed to take care of the Rialto and so on and so forth. And that was talked about for years. We need to do something to make to sustain these things rather than come begging to the city council every year for money. Something was finally proposed. And then a 5-year budget plan, absolutely right. A city, the 4th largest city in this state of Illinois, has no 5-year budget plan. How do you run a business with no budget plan? You got to put together one, live with it, massage it, make money, lose money, whatever. You need a 5-year business plan. It just makes sense. 83% of this budget is salaries and benefits, which doesn't allow you to do much with the remaining amount of money. And I do agree with you, Mr. Mayor. You did do some work in the city of Joliet with that extra money that's going to be part of that deficit this year by putting in new infrastructure or water mains and so on, which is needed in this old town. Mr. Hug, you beat to death the issue of separating out the Rialto, the museum, and all these other things that you asked for to do every vote. And I support that. If you believe in that, that's great. But when he did that, and like I said, rather make a motion to make it the 1.2 bond issue, which I don't think the council would support. They never have supported you in your position of doing away with those funding. But that's the way you could have handled that. You could have said, I make a motion that we move that money into a bond issue and be done with it. But again, never done. Now with that also comes cost-cutting measures. Somebody mentioned cost cut. I agree with you. There has to be cost-cutting measures. But look at the cost of the legal. You moved the legal out of Joliet. You moved it to a private attorney. You claim you're making money. But let's examine the court cases that were settled. How many less court cases of 1 year to the other? What was the value of those court cases? So you can play with those numbers. The Inspector General position hasn't worked out. He spends more time at the History Museum and the president has been awarded 2 awards for it. Let's put him on the adjudicator's job that Marty asked for a new position coming up.
You have 4 minutes. Can you wrap it up, please?
Thank you. I certainly can. Those are some cost-cutting measures that I would do to get the budget back in balance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Jim Rolfe, 4707 Ashford Lane, Joliet. I've come to a number of these meetings to talk about our community. You've heard a lot of comments tonight from many people from all parts of the city. They're all here for one reason. They care about the city of Joliet. All of you care about the city of Joliet. You've heard different perspectives on things. I'd like to think that we're not thinking about today, but we're trying to plan for the future of our city. If we go stagnant, where will we be in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. If we're talking about retiring and they want to stay here, if we can't keep the city at a high level so they can stay, will they want to stay? I care about this city. I've been here 45 years, not as long as some in this room. But I challenge anybody who challenges me when they say we need to make our community better. I challenge you as I challenge myself. We need to make our community better. These decisions are tough. No one ever said a budget means that's what you're going to spend. That is simply a guide that says we need to be thoughtful about how we do this. Can we do it for less money and do it at the level we need to do? If the answer is yes, then you're going to save a little on that line item in your budget. Hotel motel tax, originally it was initiated to help the Rialto. It's been suggested by many, including myself, that it helped the museum, that it helped Bicentennial Park. I heard recently that Bicentennial Park had 385 events at that facility this past year. Not all of them cover the expense of opening the doors, but those are important events for a lot of people. We need to be thoughtful. Someone mentioned that we've elected you as our leaders to represent us. Yes, that is true. Are the decisions easy? 99% of them are not, because you will always find someone who doesn't think it's the right direction to take. I would suggest, you haven't heard me mention a name, because I refuse to mention a name because we're all part of this community. Anybody who wants to debate things, we should connect with each other and debate. We need to be thinking about what do we want our community to look like 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years out. The library is a pretty strong example of that. Do you want young children in this community not to have the educational benefit of a library that's state-of-the-art? I had someone say to me the other day, why would we invest in the library in downtown when we have such a nice library on the west side of town? I said, it is a nice library. We need to have two, not one. Look at the size of our city. Look at the population of children under the age of 12. I'm probably running short on my time, so I will wrap it up, but I will suggest to you that this is important. Just because you pass a budget tonight doesn't mean you have to spend everything that's in it. Doesn't mean you can't rescind something that's in it after the first of the year. The law requires you pass the budget by the end of the year. That's the law, and you have to follow it. I would suggest to you, if you want to talk about any of the items in there, I'm happy to meet anytime and talk with you, because it is a tough decision, but collectively, we have to do what's right for the future of our city. If we don't do that, the city will not be at the level that we all want it to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on an agenda item? Seeing none, then next is ordinances, and I'm going to turn it over to Steve Jones to.
Thank you. Good evening. If it's okay with the council, I'll sort of treat this as a pre-council meeting, because I think a lot of the items on the agenda have some spreadsheets and some other information for context that probably requires more discussion. Also, some of the questions that were asked by several of the speakers.
Do you want to do that prior to going through and voting then?
Yeah,
Okay.
if we could. So what you have in today's budget is virtually the same budget that had been delivered to the council in November 19th, the discussions began. There's only one change that I'll highlight, and that is within the fire department overtime budget within the general fund for 2020. The original city manager proposal was for $2,226,900. That's been reduced by $300,000. It's still higher than last year, the 2019 budget, which was $1,500,000. But in effect, there's some movement with regard to implementing a new sick leave policy, and there's some other things the city can do to continue to keep overtime under control. So that's the only change. So that would, in effect, bring the entire budget document that you have with all funds to $328,913,441. Let me reread that. $328,913,441. Most budget discussions that we've had since we started the public part of this have involved the general fund. And in front of you and on the screen is a spreadsheet that shows the percentage breakdown and the dollar amounts that are associated with increases between 2019 and 2020. This has been adjusted, by the way, for that fire department overtime reduction. So in effect, if you look, the two largest increases are at the top. That's over 55% of the budget. 2.7 million of the total is based on pensions, recalculation of what our police, fire, and IMRF pensions will entail. The next largest is capital transfer for vehicles. This is where we start the discussion about our vehicle replacement program. Within this budget, there's a proposal for a $4 million bond issue that would be funded through the addition of 3 cents per gallon on the motor fuel tax. In effect, the 1.8 million is the total value that's been calculated for the tax. Our goal would be to create a separate fund sometime in the fiscal year. So all the money from that 3 cents goes into a vehicle replacement fund. We could obviously get the $4 million the first year plus the 1.8 million to throw into the pot in addition, and then the debt service payments would start in 2021. So this would allow us to get into that $16 million of identified need that our public works, our fleet, and finance folks have talked about. Not going to do it all in 1 year, not going to do it probably in 4 to 5 years, but in effect it stops kicking the can and starts the process of replacing vehicles in a proactive, regular schedule. The remainder of the budget, we have $8 million of increases between 2019 and 2020 proposed. Really, all the action is within those first two line items. So this is what has really driven the need for additional fees. I know someone in the audience had talked about, do we sharpen our pencils? I'll point out the fact that the finance director and I, before council even saw this budget, we had knocked $6,622,000 out of the budget. These were requests made by departments, and in effect, even after that, the gap that you see here, these increases are what is driving the fee increases. To recap the revenues, most of the fee increases that have been discussed up to this point have actually been, not dollar amount, but individual fee increases have been approved by council in a variety of ordinances. We've had some building fees, some development fees, obviously the cannabis tax. Those are things that are in this budget but have already been approved by the council. The things that remain, and their ordinances later in the evening, involve the hotel motel tax, which proposes to go from 7% to 10%. And as stated by several speakers, the goal there is to create a separate fund that we're calling our cultural asset fund. In a way, it's to separate those things that we cherish downtown. They bring in a lot of tourism. They bring in a lot of pride in terms of the community. It's a way to get hotel motel tax, tourism type taxes to fund that and give that a sustainable revenue source for the future. So the 1.2 billion is the hotel motel tax. Local gas tax, that's estimated to bring in 1.8 million. It's about 600,000 per 1 penny. And that, again, we would look to put that within a vehicle replacement fund that would be dedicated to that use. Waste management was mentioned. When the city renegotiated a contract, there were a series of increases over the 10 years. There was never any provision or reference for that pass-through. In effect, there's an ordinance that passes on exactly what waste management is increasing and passes that on to the customer. And as I said, all the other revenues that were proposed, other fees and revenues proposed have already been adopted by council. So that is pretty much the wrap-up of the general fund. Fleet replacement, cultural assets, the bond issue for the library, along with fill in the gap that you see on this spreadsheet. As I did indicate, I believe 2 meetings ago, this is all about revenues and expenses. The city could certainly decide not to do these revenues, but in effect, to avoid an additional year of deficits, we would have to come up with corresponding decreases in expenses. And what I had indicated is that if we stripped out all these revenue increases, the funding of the fleet goes away, and then we have to start looking at individual capital projects that are in this budget for departments, and then we have to look at the possibility of not filling positions as retirements or resignations occur. So these are choices. I'm not proposing it, but these are certainly choices we have to avoid some of these fee increases. But I think what we've put together is a pretty balanced approach. Later on, I'll show you some charts that indicate how the property taxes have been over the last 5 years. And in effect, they've been going down. The property tax rate that the city has been involved in and controls has been going down. So it's something where we've tried to balance this budget, create sustainability through fees and taxes as opposed to property taxes. And in effect, people use the roads, they pay the gas tax. People use motel tax. People use hotels and motels, they pay the tax. So we're trying to balance that burden of future revenues and sustainability upon those people that are actually using things within the community as opposed to the homeowner or the business owner who just owns property. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on this.
Your Honor, if I might, just a couple of questions, Steve. You talked about the trimming of about $6 million out of the budget, and I commend you for that. Sharpening our pencils certainly will make things a little bit more palatable. But can you I got 2 questions. One about the last time that the hotel motel tax was increased at all, or when was it put in? Is there a...
It was about 10 years ago.
Is it 10?
Mr. Gadati will answer that question.
All righty, thank you.
Well,
1989? Thank you. 1989. Okay, and my other question, on the waste management contract, I know that we did a pretty lucrative deal with them. And there was a grant, pool of money, grant monies that were set aside that is brought back into our coffers to give out for other, things to be done. With this new increase that you've got here on that, does that affect what we get back from waste management?
In terms of the grant?
In terms of
No, the grant is separate.
That's a separate thing. That stays?
150? I'm sorry, so 150,000, we get that.
Right.
All that this is for, this particular pass-through, is the exact charge that we get that increases the year-to-year fees, we pass that on to the customer. So it doesn't affect our...
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure that we were still, getting something back from that. And I think that, Mr. Jones, I want to thank you and the entire staff for the work that you all have put in to present this real-time budget for us. And you did that, and department heads, you did that without fear or favor. So I appreciate that. We've had some good times, and now we got some hills to climb. I understand that. And I see that this is the first time, and I have to say this is the first time since I took this seat on the dais in 2015 that I have had a real-time budget with gaps and some recommendations for solutions put here. And so I'm very appreciative of that, sir. So, again, thank you for that. I think that, I'm trying to catch all my questions here. Yep, I think that's, everything else I was pretty clear on. I just wanted to make sure I got that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear on the 6 million that you trimmed out of the budget.
Yes.
Was that out of last year's budget, or that was what was requested from staff to be put in the budget that you didn't put in?
Yes, that was what was requested as part of the 2020 budget. So as we go through these things, I mean, before you see it, we literally go over this thing with a fine-tooth comb. Every department head appears before the finance director and myself. They go through their justification. As we go through it, we identify some things that become more wants than needs. And then, of course, it all gets measured up as to what are the available resources. So sometimes even needs get pushed out a year or 2 years if there isn't sufficient funding. So that was the problem we faced. I mean, even with $6 million coming out of the budget, we still face a significant possibility of a deficit.
Right, but for me, it kind of just sounded like that, and I know you're just not what you're saying now, is that you trimmed 6 million out of what we had already spent, like this year.
No, this is moving
Like you
forward.
cut back,
Right.
like you made some cuts.
Correct.
No, okay.
Your Honor, one more question, and I forgot this one. Steve, I had reached out to you, and I think I reached out to one of the department heads too, that we had made a decision a while back before this budget came about. And I like the idea of the 5-year projection in the budget. I like the idea that every 6 months we may come back and tweak things if need be. So that's a good idea, because I would have never went for that 2.5 mil that we switched around before I got this budget. I would have voted to no on that. So thank you. I know I came to you and the department head to try and get something where we could pull that back. That was $2 million.
Right. And the bid had
in the
already
pot.
happened for the
It
roads.
was already gone, and so I hate that we didn't have that opportunity. But
And your point is a good one. I mean, the 5-year plan is intended so that there are no surprises. I mean, we've operated on annual budgets for years, forever, perhaps, I don't know. And to suddenly come to you and talk about the need to do some things that are going to cause some pain, in the last 3 months of the calendar year, I get it. It's like, what? A little bit of shock. If the council had been exposed to sort of the ongoing discussions that, well, literally, I've been here for 5 years. Every manager, including, Marty, has come up with possible revenue increases because the sustainability, and, it's kind of like the train coming at the end of the tunnel. And I don't need to use really horrible analogies, but in effect, if we don't make these kind of changes now, it puts us in a position where it's much more difficult to make them later. So by getting a 5-year plan, which I've asked our finance department to get to you by June, in effect, you'll see the trend lines, you'll see the context. You could have debates about the validity of projections or whatever, but at least you know that things aren't a 12-month period, and that's the only context that you look at things. You have to look at this in terms of trends. We've had good trends, we've had bad trends. I'm sure the cycle will continue, but ultimately, if we could do something before we absolutely have to, it creates a lot less pain, and it's easier and much more politically palatable to handle. So that's going to be key moving forward, that 5-year plan.
thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
two questions. Well, one question first. That 10% increase in professional services, does that include the outside law firms that we've had to handle over the last year? Like, for example, Ansel Glink?
This is the increase projected. Most of this, I believe, is engineering. We've got several projects with consulting fees. The fee, we haven't budgeted any increase for Ansel Glink because, it's going to be a rounding error in terms of the total expense. But there are a variety of professional services in your legal engineering, IT. It's a combination. So what I did was I took that category and just looked from year 1 to year 2 to see what increase or decrease was happening.
because over the last year or two, we've been handing out a lot of money to Ansel Blank. And also, what's that other one, Baird,
Clark Baird Smith for
Yeah.
labor, right.
right. That's a lot of money we've been
Right.
handing out there.
We have a number of law firms we use for for the expertise we don't have in-house, and in effect, what you're describing are some of those expertise.
So all the money we're handing out for that, if we hired a new attorney, they couldn't handle that in-house? As opposed to
Well, there is a
spending all that money?
proposal, there is a proposal in this budget to pull back some of the services that are related to adjudication and use an on-staff attorney. So that's actually in this budget, but that has to have some further discussion through the calendar year.
And then, before we go any further, when we start getting to the approving the annual budget, could we separate the library out of that tax for the city? Since they can't put it out for referendum, can't this council put it out to referendum? Since we're gonna bond it?
The council, by resolution, can put a referendum on the ballot. But there are, just so you know, there are some limitations. For example, I think you can only put 3 on, so if you're number 4, you couldn't, and there's some time restrictions. But yes, generally speaking, council can put by a resolution vote, a referendum on the ballot.
So can we take that out of there?
Yeah, if you wanted to. I mean,
Because what I would like to do then, I would like to make a motion to put the public library, let the people decide, because they're the ones that are gonna have to pay for this. I'd like to make a motion to put it on the referendum since the library can't do it.
I would make a second on that motion. What election cycle? I'm thinking November when most people show up.
Right, I mean, it's too late probably for this March
There would have,
primary.
yeah, there would have, if that, let's just say the vote passed, you have to pass a separate resolution that you would have in writing to do it, so. I think the only thing that you could really do is pull it off.
Just making a motion
And
now
then
to take
next
it off.
time, we'd have to write something.
I'm not sure yet.
So, I
Yeah, Marty,
received a lot of,
Wouldn't you have to vote on the wording of the referendum?
Yeah, you have to do a separate vote on a referendum that you'd have in front of you with the wording and.
Well, we have enough time to do that for the November election.
Oh, you'd
It's a
have-
presidential year, so you're going to have the most number of actual residents who show up for that election and look at that referendum.
I mean, people are facing a lot of taxes here all at one time. And I can't tell you the phone calls and the emails I've received about this library. The library's not gonna shut down tomorrow. These services are still gonna be there, even though you say this person speaks Spanish, doesn't speak English. Those services aren't going to stop whether we pass this or not. I even asked you for a compromise for next year. Start with your 4 million, but you wanna do the whole thing at one time. And I just don't think it's right at this time. That's my opinion, and I'm going by the people that I represent. So I would ask that we, the city, put this out for referendum, since it's our money,
So there was a second on that.
Are you putting it for November?
for November,
No,
yes.
No, before you do that, why don't you just vote to remove it out of the budget, so then you can just vote on it
Later,
separately, yeah.
separately, tonight or another time.
Well, I mean, just like you did with the other things, it would be a motion, just like you did, but then the referendum question, we're gonna have to look at that separately and get something else in front of you.
Okay, and then that would give your folks enough time to gather support, and then let the people decide. So, what, there's a motion and a second?
Well, what was your motion then? I think Marty's advising.
My motion would be to put this on a referendum in the future, in November, at the big election, and, how do you word that then legally?
It would probably be a motion to separate that item out of the budget, and then you can vote on it separately. And then with the thought that next time it would be a separate resolution on that.
So just take it out now?
Just take it out.
So I have to make a motion, to take it out, or do you just take it out as the city manager?
No, you'd have to make a because it's already presented in.
All right, then I'll make a motion to take the library out till the future.
I will second that.
It's been motioned and second to remove to separate the library out of the 2020 annual budget for the city. Councilman Dickinson?
No.
Councilwoman Gavin?
No.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
No.
Councilwoman Quillman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon,
No.
Councilman Turk.
No.
No.
So are you looking for more discussion, or?
If there are any more questions, I'm certainly happy to answer.
Mayor,
Sure.
you know, we talk about some of these taxes that are minuscule, meaningless to some people, a little bit of an irritant to other people. It all depends on your economic status, or extremely worrisome to some people. Earlier, Mrs. Shanahan was more generous. My numbers that I have here says that Joliet's average household income is $62,008. More striking is the average income of a Joliet resident is $24,461 a year. The tax increases from the state and the county already in the books, and then the piling on of another 3 cents. Those all combined, if someone drives one car, 20 gallons, which is 1 tank a week, which comes out to anywhere from 350 to 500 miles, depending on how old your car is. That is adding $270 to that person, which is 1.1% of their total income, to that person's individual responsibility. If you got families that have 2, 3, and 4 cars to get people around, even if they're junkers, every car, doesn't matter how new or old, is going to come out without the same amount of money. So these are some serious issues, and the people are right to come forward. And no one should look down their nose at someone who says, this affects me. Not everybody's rich, not everybody's poor. The hotel motel tax, I don't understand the relevance of how long ago we did or didn't. Apparently, I wasn't remembering right. I thought we had increased it slightly, and there was debate over whether it should go to the Rialto back in 2012, 2013. But regardless, we're at 7% for our share right now. Plainfield's at 5%, Naperville's at 5.5%, and Aurora's at 3%. I don't care if we increased it 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or 2 minutes ago. Going up 3% will be 10%. And as a small business owner and someone who understands margins, yeah, it has a real effect on folks. And no, I don't blame hardworking individuals that open, whether it's a franchise, corporate-owned, what have you, hotels here, and say that they're oversaturating, and that's why they can't put seats or whatever the comment was. They came here, and some of them came here even though we had 1.5% to 3%, 4% higher tax rate than other communities. And again, another example of piling on. Parking garage is not a tax. Parking garage is an enterprise fund. It's like a publicly owned business. So it should pay for itself, just like a lot of us think that PACE or RTA or CTA should pay for itself, that if you don't use it, why should you pay for it? That's got some legitimate concern, and that's not an increase. I believe we've already approved that parking increase in a split vote several weeks ago. So that's not part of this. It's kind of smoke being thrown up. Something new for the Rialto, for the prison. Somebody had mentioned that. For the museum, well, make it profitable. You know, we're completely ignoring market. If people don't want to make it profitable, you have to accept that.
State tax.
You know, and one speaker had suggested that I should, which I would think at that point would become grandstanding, I should make a motion to defund those 3 things and turn that money into a bond. I don't, because I'm smart enough to know it's not going to pass. I know it. Mayor, you know it. Steve, you know it. It ain't going to pass. So I'm not going to chew my cabbage twice and do a grandstand on it. But that would be a more efficient use of the money without taxing other folks. Putting together a $16 million bond to take care of many of our issues. You know,
Excuse me.
it was
If we were to do that, how long would it take to pay that back?
20 years.
Thank you.
At a 3% bond rate. You know, some of our bonds, smaller bonds in recent 5-6 years, I believe, were down at 2.3, 2.6, and 2.7%. 3% is a safe guesstimate. You know, and someone had mentioned as well, too, if there's not enough, if we don't spend enough money to keep things up higher, maybe people won't want to stay here. Well, if we tax them out, they're not going to want to stay here either. So there's a balance. And I'm a big proponent of things that should be generated by user. You know, when you tax somebody to put something, you know, like the Rialto, not to beat on the poor old girl, but When you tax people who don't want to go or can't afford to go, you're forcing them to make a donation. Now you want to tax them more on their gas so that they're paying $270 a year, all combined, to be clear, not just the Joliet. And the last item I'll say is, it's been something that kind of got under my skin a bit. There's been so much misinformation, or confusion about the original gas tax concept that was actually apparently just a committee discussion. And I've gone back and looked at the Herald News, and unless the Herald News was wrong on quoting it, the original quote from the councilwoman was, "We currently only charge a penny," which she's referring to the motor fuel tax per gallon. There's room for more. Nobody ever said how much. Now we know it's going to be 3 cents. But that was the accurate, according to the local media, that was the accurate, and I remember it from being here at the meeting, that was the accurate quote. We currently only charge. Last meeting I had asked for a further breakdown with the occupational sales tax and everything, because some people think that when they buy a gallon of gas and pay 77 cents, only a penny goes to Joliet. That's not accurate. Is it, Jim, did you do that for me when I'd asked last time to do a breakdown on like the 2.75 occupation retail tax that applies? All of that? I did ask for it when we had the budget talk last time.
That was presented at the last meeting.
I'm sorry?
That breakdown of where the gas.
I don't recall that. Do you have that with you?
$3 a gallon, that was presented at the last meeting.
Do you have that with you again?
We'll see if we can bring it up.
All right, thank you. Right now, that's all I really wanted to add to the conversation, because, $8 here, $10 there, 3 cents a gallon here, $270 a year. It'd be like me if I went out today and decided to donate blood, but I decided that I was going to go to 12 different blood banks and told them, just take out a quarter pint. The fact that each of them only took a quarter pint, which you're not going to notice if you're watching, is going to kill me. This is how I look at these taxes. It is just a quarter pint of blood at a time for folks that are saying, please, not now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just one more thing with the gas thing. Did we look at charging for diesel fuel?
It applies the 3 cents per gallon to all grades. We had a little bit of a chat about that. I think we have to be careful about, let's say going a little bit further with one type of fuel, because we do have several developments in process. I don't think we want to discourage some of the economic development that might involve some fuel.
Well, don't all those big trucks that come through here use diesel fuel?
Correct. What I'm saying is
There's
there
one
could,
that caused a horrible accident on 80 and 30 and shut it down. And that's the only reason I'm here, is because my family didn't make it here yet, because I'm having dinner. I am on vacation, but I'm here. So I'd like to get this going. I'm sorry that all these taxes are coming forward, and I'd like to make a motion for, let's separate it and do the diesel, like Mr. Sheridan said, tax the diesel fuel.
Clarification on the motion?
To lessen this tax for our taxpayer, for our people, from 4 cents a gallon, and then see how this works while we tax the diesel fuel, the 18-wheelers, whatever that diesel fuel is.
So you want to go back to the 1
We
cent?
talked about it before.
Right, you want to go back to the 1 cent
Right.
for
See how that works out, because we
non-diesel
can always
fuel.
come back and revisit this other tax.
And then increase. Now, the only thing that I might suggest, because yes, we've all considered that, but it didn't seem like we were being heard at the time, because we do have to make sure what Shanahan is charging on I-80 at their truck stop, and we got to make sure what Wilmington and Shanahan is charging.
Well, we could take this off the agenda and
Right.
explore that a little further.
Because, if our taxes are going to be too high for diesel, it's only a matter of 3.5, 4 miles to get to Shanahan. So I don't know what the answer is, Councilwoman, and I am in agreement that we should look at this option, because 63% of all trucks that come down I-80 don't even stop in Will County, but they will stop if they need fuel. So I agree, but taking it off, I certainly, if your motion is to withdraw it, like we withdraw it from the budget, I would make a second to withdraw it from the budget, and then we can discuss the other options later.
Explore it later.
It's been motioned and second to withdraw the motor fuel tax from the 2020 annual budget. Councilwoman Gavin?
No.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
No.
Councilwoman Quillman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
No.
Councilman Turk?
I had talked to Mr. Jones last week about that very thing, about the diesel, separating the diesel, and his concern was that there are several truck stops on the books now that may reconsider not coming here if it's separated, so I vote no.
Councilman Dickinson,
No.
motion failed.
Mayor, it's good to know that we're making sure that we don't scare away possible truck stops, but that we're taxing our residents out of the city.
Yeah, Mike, I've had conversations
Yeah.
with some of these people too. Just so we're clear, because maybe you misspoke. They don't mind the gas tax being raised. They only mind if it's diesel gas?
No, you didn't understand me.
Yes.
I asked Mr. Jones if we could tax the diesel at a higher rate than gasoline. And he was concerned about separating the two and because some of the towns around here do have a different tax for gasoline versus diesel.
So
He
instead
didn't
of
think-
separating, we're just gonna raise it all. You think they're gonna be happy with that?
No, no. I've never had anybody come to me saying, please raise the gas tax, please raise my water bill, please raise this. Nobody's ever said that. Nobody's gonna come and tell you to raise the stuff.
Well, exactly, and they're saying the opposite.
Right.
But
They always
maybe I
have.
misunderstood you. You made it sound like they're okay with raising
No,
everything.
never said that.
They objected to just raising the diesel.
No. I think, did you understand, Mr. Jones, my question?
Yeah, and I could throw that out. I, in fact, talked about the fact that there could be a time and a place where that analysis will generate some real movement towards doing that. But my fear was, since we do have several large developments that are, still on paper, I don't think we want to discourage economic development if somebody, decides that we're gouging diesel, and why would I come to Joliet with this new development when I could, take them to a place just outside of town.
Or they could say that about the whole gas tax being raised, that you're gouging everything. Not just diesel, because we're gonna sell a lot of unleaded fuel too, but we're gonna get gouged on that, which is what they have expressed. I don't know who in this council has talked to anybody, but you are stifling economic development with this.
Quick, Mayor, I'm going to expand on that. Economic development, and we all know why, has been dead since May or June. The committee hardly meets anymore. So I don't know what Steve means by stifling it. It's already dead.
Well, if you don't, Your Honor, I also had that same question about the diesel prices being higher, because it is the trucks that are causing most of the damage on our roads, and we need that. Again, after my research on it too, it showed exactly the same thing, Mike, that you said, and Steve, that it would interfere, even though there was some projects out there I voted against, but it would hurt that particular part for right now. But we can always go back to that. But right now, I wanted to make sure that if we could increase anything, it would be that diesel portion of it.
Well, you just
And
voted
it's
not
not.
to do that.
I know. I wanted to do that before, but as I was explaining after the research, I found out that was not a prudent thing to do.
And I don't want to assume anything. We've all voted, you haven't.
Figuring his
If you raise the gas
270 based on
tax, you're doing exactly what you claim your research is telling you not to do.
Okay.
Just for the record.
We don't get any of that.
I think you might have misunderstood.
No, I think I understood. Again, Mike, I think it's a lot of double talk. If you're claiming that just raising the diesel tax is
No, I
going
didn't
to
say
scare away
just
business.
raising the diesel
That was
tax.
the motion that was just voted on. And you
what I-
voted no to that.
What I said was, Mayor, and I think if we go back to it, I said I too wanted to raise the diesel at a higher rate than the regular 3 cents or whatever that was, to do that. And after I found out that was not,
So your
a thing
research
for
told
me
you
to
3
do.
cents is okay, but above that's wrong?
No, my research didn't say 3 cents was okay.
Okay.
It was just not a prudent thing that I thought at that time to break out the diesel and the regular gasoline. So
Fair
it's
enough.
that
Thank you.
was Good, thank you.
Mayor, because we vote, because I gotta get going.
Mayor?
Well, if you have to go, why don't you finish up, Councilwoman?
Well,
Oh, you want to vote?
I want to vote.
Yeah, I was going to say, we know what
That's
it's
why I'm
about.
here
It's
to vote.
obvious.
Well,
Let's
I
just get it
would,
done.
okay,
I need to say something.
go ahead, yeah.
I'd like to start with the needs. I feel our needs are definite needs. The elimination of the fleet, if we don't pass the budget, is a serious problem. The other capital amounts that would have to come out, sidewalks, trees, police cameras. That is a serious. The next would be then a hiring freeze, because we would not have any money to bring in new staff. I think the breakdown of how the money would come, $8 for the year, 66 cents a month for the library is well worked to the best of their abilities. The gas average is a little less than $20 a year. I realize it is a car, Larry, you're correct, but that's about $1.66 a month. We / staff did nothing with the property tax, which would affect everybody. So every area of finance coming in is going to affect us. It's going to affect me, just like everybody else in this room. But it's also our best opportunity for non-residents to help pay our needs. And with that, I am for the budget.
Okay, thank you. I have a few comments. I'll start with you, Councilman Mudge. I agree about the elimination of the fleet, not necessarily, because we have replaced vehicles. Ms. Secco, you're right. And I've outlined, going back to last July when this was first brought up, what we were able to spend discretionary money without raising taxes. And unlike one of the comments that was said earlier, don't let anyone lie to you. The city of Joliet, since I've been mayor, has put money into our reserve account. We've been saving money without raising taxes. You asked a question, ma'am, about where the numbers to back it up. The short answer is there aren't any numbers. These are projections. And I took time a couple meetings ago to go back to 2015, 2016, and point out specifically how wrong those projections were. In 2016, what was presented to me and the council was over $14 million off between the deficits we were told we were looking at and the surplus that the city ran that year. So, and I believe there's a reason why. We talked about that. It's very conservative accounting that our accountants do, which I think is the proper way to manage people's money. But again, for someone on the council to be fooled about projections when they are wrong every year, I don't know how wrong they're going to be. I could guess, but I can't predict. But to answer your question, there are no numbers to back it up. Another question was asked, how long ago did we see this? And did we put together a wish list? Well, I spoke at a previous meeting. What happened in this budget round was a complete break in protocol, and since I've been mayor, no city manager would have dared to suggest any tax increase, not one, without coming to the mayor and probably going to several council people to see if there was consensus. I learned about this when the people of Joliet learned about it. It was done behind my back. I did talk to several council people on the other side, so to speak, who claim they also were not consulted. So you can only take people at their word. But this was first presented, Steve, at the end of November. Is that correct?
I think it's the 11th November, somewhere.
Okay. And the first meeting then was a couple weeks later?
I believe so.
And there's been 3 meetings, including last week. This is the 4th meeting?
3 or 4.
Okay. Regarding compromise, unfortunately, I think what you're seeing tonight is what we've seen on the council since last May. Doesn't appear to be a willingness to compromise or to build consensus. It's simply 5 people have the majority. That's the way the system works. So they're going to ram through what they want to ram through. And that appears to be, again, what's happened tonight, without presuming anything, Councilman. You haven't voted yet. But it was a 4-4 vote, and there seemed to be confidence from staff that as long as Councilwoman Gavin was here, the 5 votes were going to be here to pass the budget. So that's where we're at tonight. I hope that answers some of the questions. Steve, again, I think the 5-year plan is an excellent idea and overdue. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with your comments about, well, tonight you did acknowledge for the first time, I think, that there's choices that need to be made and we do have options. I urged you a month ago to go back to the drawing table and look at those options. You were also correct when you said that every city manager has brought forward potential tax increases or fee increases, and that has been stopped by both me as the mayor and the council. And I still maintain it's our job, and Councilman Reardon, I know I spoke to you about this a couple weeks ago, staff is always going to ask for what they want or what they wish for. It's our job to give them what they actually need and to determine what we can live within our means. There were comments made about that earlier, and that's where I think where we've lost this. I think what's in this budget, sure, we can use new vehicles, we always can. We have replaced them, we need to replace more, there's no question about it. But I don't think we need to run an $18 million bond to do it. So again, I guess that's just symptomatic of the entire process, that what people want is here, and apparently the 5 votes are gonna be there to ram it through. But I do think it was done much more thoroughly and much more responsibly in past years. I think it's unfortunate the way it's gone down this year. And again, I'm presuming what the vote's gonna be, and maybe that's incorrect. But I don't agree that this is something we need to do. As I said to you a month ago, seeing that we have run surpluses and we spent tens of millions of dollars in discretionary funds for new vehicles and for water main and sewer main replacements. It's money we didn't have to spend. We were doing so well, we chose to spend that money. We upped the amount of street repairs last year by $2 or $2.5 million because of how well we were doing financially. If we were in a situation where we couldn't pay the bills, where paychecks weren't going to cash, or we were talking about laying people off, then you go back to the taxpayers and say, look, we have no other options. We're not at that point yet. And I think your comments, I think you made a comment that you don't want to get to that point, you want to do it now, and maybe that's where we disagree. I think it's premature. In light of what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years, year after year, we've proven the projections wrong. I think it's premature to do it right now. So those are my comments.
Mayor?
Yes.
And I would tell people to be careful. When you have terms like the elimination of the fleet, that sounds scary. I guess if we don't vote on this budget, all 900 vehicles are going to gone, eliminated. It's not true. We've replaced more vehicles from 2015 to 2019 than they did this 8 years prior to me getting elected in 2011. Okay?
Without raising taxes.
Without raising taxes. It was mentioned up here by a council member that we didn't do anything. We didn't touch the property tax. Well, no, we shouldn't. We have the highest sales tax in a 40-mile radius, or second highest. I can't remember if Orland Park has it a little bit higher. We've got the highest sales tax. We're going to have the highest gas tax. What other tax do we have that's high? I'll think about it in a second. Oh, the hotel motel tax. We're 3 to 5 points above everybody else. No, we shouldn't be touching the property tax. That would make us high in every. I don't know, unless we're going for a trifecta and want to bat 1,000 on being the highest for every tax. I do remember the last 2 city managers, full-time professional city managers, that came through and sat in the audience when we decided to hire them. I don't know if you guys remember, they were eyeing it. I noticed your property tax was awfully low compared to other cities. And I told both of them, and where's our sale tax? Well, we didn't look at that. Yeah, look at that before you come to us hinting at that you want to gouge people on their property tax. So there's some scare tactics going on. Let's move forward. The councilwoman has a whole house full of family coming over, I understand. And Merry Christmas to all of them, Councilwoman Quillen. We know how this is going to end. Not to steal your thunder, Councilman. Let's just move forward on the vote.
Okay. We'll call the vote.
We got a motion and a second to approve or not.
Well, it's just to read it off.
So we have Council Memo Number 714-19, an ordinance approving the 2020 annual budget for the City of Joliet. It's recommended said ordinance be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Hug,
No.
Councilman Morris,
No.
Councilman Mudrin,
Yes.
Councilwoman Quillman,
No.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Yes.
Councilman Turk.
I'm going to vote yes, but I want to make a comment. The last thing any elected person wants to do is raise any property tax or any user fee. And, the most political popular thing to do is vote against it. And I've done that before when I didn't realize, or not realize, but when I didn't expect that we needed it. However, this prior councils have been criticized for kicking the can down the road, and I think this would just, if these weren't implemented, I think it would be kicking it down the road even further, and higher increase would probably have to come back next year or the year after. So I vote aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Yes, right before I vote, let me clear up a couple of things that was said this evening that I want to make sure I'm on the record for saying this. The gentleman, I think it was somebody was saying that about the insurances and all of that we receive up here, the $19,000 plus insurance. I don't take the insurance. I don't have the insurance, okay? The other thing I see on this budget, you're showing me gaps, but you're also giving me some recommendations for solutions. It has been stated that, I think in the paper, that the mayor supported my campaign, and then all of a sudden I switched allegiances. Let me make one thing very clear. My vote is not up for sale. It is not in allegiance to anybody. I take every memo that I have, I go through it, and I make a decision on it myself. Nobody tells me how to vote, and I'm not in anybody's pocket. So I want to just make that clear to everybody. What I decide to do is my decision. And even though I'm linked with my good friends and my colleagues down there, that goes for them too. You know, you can group me in this group of Mudron 5 or however you want to say it, but that is not me. That is not me. So it was made perfectly clear that the tax hikes are on my shoulders. Well, I'll be your huckleberry. I vote aye.
Motion carried.
The next council memo is 715-19, and what this is it adopts the levy for two special service areas we have that are active within the community. One is SSA number 14, and this is our Economic Development Special Service Area. And the second is SSA number 7, which funds detention basin maintenance within the Park Hill subdivision. There's no increase in the rate proposed, so these are a continuation of the existing rates in effect.
Okay, so we have
Is that B? Oh,
Council
I'm
Memo
sorry.
number 715-19, ordinances for the levy and assessment of taxes for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019, and ending December 31, 2019, in and for the 1996 Joliet Special Service Area Number 14, Joliet City Center, and 2009 Joliet Special Service Area Number 7, Park Hill Subdivision. It is recommended said ordinances be adopted.
So moved. Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman,
These folks are aware of this, and Park Hill requested that be a special service area, so I will vote aye on that.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Pauline, could you remove that off of the system? I have the next PowerPoint slide coming up.
Sure.
The next item is Council Memo 716-19, which is item C. These are the ordinances that levy taxes for both the City of Joliet along with the Joliet Public Library. Property taxes are strange, you know, in terms of understanding, because I'm going to tell you, the levy that we're proposing is 4.31% above what was levied in 2018. However, because community growth affects the final tax rate, we anticipate that this will be the same tax rate for 2019 as existed in 2018. I put together a chart going back, showing the last 5 years of real data along with our projection for next year. And, you know, we've heard stuff about taxes, and I get all that. But in effect, this is what's happened to the tax rate with the City of Joliet. Because of growth, I mean, if you were in a home that didn't have an addition put on, or a business that was pretty much the same without a lot of physical improvements, or you didn't have your neighborhood reassessed, you could look at that tax bill and your City of Joliet total dollar amount would reflect this curve downward. So in effect, we've done, because we've had a real strong sales tax base and diversity, I mean, having gaming revenues has been a godsend, even though that has been declining. This is the reason that homeowners have not felt it, because the growth, and I'm going to show you that chart next, this is what's happened to growth over that same time period. So every time another $300 million of new building occurs, in effect, we're collecting new revenues but it's not coming from our existing tax base. So when I say a 4.31% levy increase, that doesn't equate to 4.31% tax increase with individuals. Obviously, if people do an addition, people have their neighborhood reassessed, that number could change. But in effect, this is the overall, this is the global. And this property tax levy is $45,189,815.
Mayor?
Yes.
One question. Theoretically, though, just to make it straight, Steve, even though our rate is the same as last year, if a person, they may see an increase in the amount going to the city if their assessed valuation increased.
Correct.
Over and above what we're levying for.
Correct. And the two things that would affect it, if they did some building improvements
Right.
that reflected in building permits,
Correct.
or the assessor in part of their reassessing a neighborhood because homes are now selling for higher values, they could reassess that neighborhood. So this is an average.
Yeah, some assessors have done that, so.
Steve and Jim Guidotti, I know the first budget meeting, you threw that number out there. Property value in Joliet, the last 4 or 5 years, including this last year, have gone up about 20 or 25%. Is that accurate?
Well, it looks more like 15.
I thought you said 7 or 8% for this year that it's gone up. You did have the number, I'm sorry, I don't have it with me.
I don't have those numbers. in
Okay.
front of me right now.
I'll present them at a future meeting. And it's something we've been tracking every year because they've gone up since 2015. Property values have risen in Joliet significantly.
And what you see is from our audit, and then the 2019 is what we've been given from the, both the Will and the Kendall County assessors.
200-some thousand dollars, right.
You need a motion on this?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded to approve council memo number 716-19, which is ordinances for the levy and assessment of taxes for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019 and ending December 31, 2019 in and for the city of Joliet, including the public library. And Councilman Mudrin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman,
No.
Councilwoman Reardon,
Aye.
Councilman Turk,
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin,
Aye.
Councilman Hug,
No.
Councilman Morris.
No.
Motion carried.
The next item is Council Memo 717-19. This is the ordinance that would amend the hotel motel tax to go from a rate of 7% to 10%.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve council memo
Paul,
number,
can you read into the record,
I'm gonna
please?
read.
Thank you.
to approve council memo number 717-19, an ordinance amending Chapter 28, Taxation, Article 7, Hotel and Motel Accommodations of the City of Joliet Code of Ordinances, tax upon the rental or leasing of any hotel or motel accommodations at the rate of 10%. And it was motioned and seconded to approve. And Councilwoman Quillman?
You know, Steve, you said when the Will County lodging people were up here and they were saying, look into that thing, the state of Illinois didn't have such an allegiance, or what did they call it? I forget.
It's called a tourism improvement district.
Okay. So you said perhaps if we pass this, then maybe we could lower it later on if that comes to fruition. But how much research have we actually done on that?
They were going to send me materials. Apparently Rockford has started the process of looking at it. I have not yet received any materials. I did indicate to them that, I'll look at what they present. And if there's a viable option where, one satisfies the same revenue needs as this, it would be silly for us not to go back and revisit it. I did indicate that my fear was that the Tourism Improvement District, as they described it, had some outside independent members who govern how the money is spent. So until I learn more about that, I'm certainly not likely to suggest the council turn, an increase in hotel motel tax over an outside board where perhaps some of their goals aren't the same as what the city council goals are. But it'll be a work in progress. My guess is by mid-year, we should have information and know where this could potentially go.
Well, could we look at this again in mid-year?
That's what I'm saying. By mid-year, we should.
But once you pass it, it will never go back down from
Oh, in
10.
terms of this,
Yeah.
we recommend that the revenues, if you don't collect the revenues, then you'll potentially have somewhat of a deficit within the 2020 budget. Doesn't mean we can't make some of those changes, but in effect, I would view this as being two different revenue sources of the same dollar amount. So literally, if the council were to go with this, it would be silly for us not to say go from 10% back to 7 or go from 10% to 8, something that doesn't increase the burden any further on the hotel motel folks, but basically makes it similar.
Councilwoman, could I interject something before you vote? If you don't mind, if you indulge me.
Go ahead.
We have businesses now, some of these buildings are worth millions. So we are asking, let's pull the curtain back and clear the smoke. They're going to pay more in property tax, just like the homeowners are, unless, of course, for some reason, their property has not gone up or it's gone down, if it's not taken care of. Plus, increasing the levy, therefore increasing what they're going to pay at the same tax rate. I don't know how much that's going to encourage them to expand. And I certainly don't know how much that's going to encourage them and attract new businesses to come in. We got the Cullinan project coming in. There could be a lot of development that spawns that once that should go through. And so, anybody who's business friendly, I don't know how you bang them for property tax increase, 3%, and if you have any understanding of margins. Thank you, Councilwoman, for letting me vent.
You're welcome. But I was going to vote no, so you didn't change my mind.
Okay.
Okay. Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
No.
Councilman Morris?
No.
Councilman Mudrin?
Yes.
Motion carried.
The next item and the last item is Council Memo 719-19, Item F, and this is an ordinance amending Chapter 14 of the Municipal Waste section of our
Steve.
code.
We have seven.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
18.
I didn't.
18.
Guess I'm in a hurry. Gas tax, Council Memo 718-19. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 28, which is covering the retail purchase of motor fuel within the city. At present, we have a 1 cent per gallon tax. The proposal, as outlined in the budget, is to go from 1 cent to 4 cents.
So moved.
Second.
Before we vote, if I can make a comment. I took some time this morning, I rode around the city and charted the gas prices at different parts of Joliet. And I know, and Councilman Morris and Councilman Gavin, you also, I think, have spoken about this over the years, about gas being more expensive on the east side of Joliet. So as of 9 o'clock this morning, I want to give you some figures of what gas cost in our city. At 4th and McDonough, there's 2 gas stations. One was $2.77 a gallon, one was $2.79. This is for regular unleaded. At Cass and Briggs, $2.75 a gallon. The gas station at Cass and Henderson was $2.99 a gallon. You cross over to the west side, I'll give you just a sampling. The Thorntons at Jefferson and Entry, $2.53 a gallon. It's almost 50 cents less than Cass and Henderson. At the Marathon at Glenwood and Republic, $2.55. At gas station at Jefferson and Larkin, $2.57. At the gas station at Jefferson and Stryker, $2.55. The Thorntons at Essington and Theodore, $2.55. So we're looking at about a 30 or 40 or maybe a 50-cent discrepancy depending on where in town you want to buy gas. So Councilman Dickinson, I'm going to ask you specifically because it's been commented, and I've received complaints about this, about you never adding to the conversation. I want to ask you how you could tell people on the east side of Joliet that are already paying 40 or 50 cents more a gallon, some of these people are coming from the poorest neighborhoods in the city, how it's okay to charge them another 3 cents on top of what they're already overpaying.
They need to identify the places that are charging the outrageous amount and go to a different place. That's the only way you're gonna get anybody to lower their prices. Don't patronize them.
But unless you do what I did and drive all over the city, how would you know where the lowest gas prices are?
There's apps. You look at the gas prices online.
So it's their fault.
I didn't say that.
Mayor?
Yes.
Here's what
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I mean, even I did the same thing.
Right.
The Shell gas station right there on Cass, and I believe that's Cass and Henderson. Is that right there? $2.95.
$2.99
Yeah.
this morning, right.
Yeah, it was,
As opposed to $2.53 on the west side.
but that is it. You know, that is the thing. We have been complaining about that, but the only way, and I kind of agree with the councilman. The only way to stop that, because they have given us every excuse in the world about lowering the gas prices, is to stop patronizing them. Stop patronizing them. Go someplace else and get the gas. I hate to admit I go to Lockport because at Murphy's it is $2 and 50-some cents. But I'm not going to pay $2.98 at this place.
Well, it's going to be more than $2.98 after.
Well, the three, whatever it's going to be, and I think that the gentleman from Thornton's actually gave us his word too, as to making sure he is competitive when he does come to our side of the town. But yeah, this has been a thing.
I think the fear is that a lot more people are going to do what you do and go to different cities to buy their gas. It's actually going to decrease the revenues.
Mayor?
Well, it's just closer. I would stay in Joliet, but it's closer from my house to Lockport than it is from my house to the west side. So
Probably
I
means
have
it's-
done that too.
Probably means Councilwoman, it's closer for your residents too, which means they should probably have Lockport too.
Save $1. Save $1. But we don't
It's
do
funny, we
something
talk about our
it.
sales tax, Mayor, big. I think it was the second highest, it may have been the highest in a 40-mile radius. We went through this several years ago. We can double check that later. But it's up there, you know, as number one or number two. There is somebody in this room, and it's not Councilwoman Gavin, who told me, I stay in Joliet, it's not you, so you're okay. I stay in Joliet for purchases under $200. When I make what I consider to be a major purchase of 200 and more, I go to Plainfield, I go to Shanahan. They're in this room right now. And that's a fact. So what you have to remember is right now, we collect about 8.3 cents per gallon on city taxes that we've approved on a $3 purchase of a gallon of gas. Right now, it is down as low by my house. It's over there, it's $2.53 or something, so the number goes up. If we're selling gas at $3, by adding this 3 cents, you're increasing the city portion of the tax by 35%. So let's use that number. Let's not say 3 cents. It's a 35% tax hike. When the price it goes down to $2.50, it's a 45% tax hike. That's all I wanted to say.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve Council Memo Number 718-19, an ordinance amending Chapter 28 Taxation, Article 9, Retail Purchase of Motor Fuel of the City of Joliet Code of Ordinances, taxable motor fuel rate of 4 cents per gallon. Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
No.
Councilman Morris.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, if you ask some of the people that the mayor was talking about that purchase the gas on the east side, like I have, they don't have, they're not gonna spend money to drive to the west side and have to drive back. They didn't spend 40 cents or 30 cents that they save going over there. They have the app. They may go to Lockport. They may go out to Gas City in the county. And as it was said earlier, that's what's going to happen. And, you know, I own over 20 vehicles, and we keep a fourth of them in Riverdale, Illinois. And the funeral home there goes over to Indiana to buy gas. I'm going to have to flip it. I'm going to have to keep 3/4 of my vehicles in Riverdale and a fourth of them here. Because, I mean, I'm in business, and 4 cents makes a difference. I either have to charge my families more money to cover these costs. When my families come in from out of town and stay at the hotels, will they be staying in Joliet? Now my family car has to go to Manuka to pick them up, Bolingbrook to pick them up. The people that live in my community works at these hotels in Joliet. And the guy stood right there, and I don't think he was bluffing. They're gonna lay him off, and they'll be unemployed. I vote no.
Councilman Mudrin.
Yes.
Councilwoman Quillman?
No.
Motion carried.
The last item, correctly, is item 719-19, which is an ordinance amending Chapter 14 of our code relating to municipal waste. Back about a year and a half ago, we entered into a new agreement with Waste Management, which was pretty financially lucrative for the city, added a number of new services that previously either weren't available or were paid for via fee. When that ordinance was adopted and the contract was signed, the city never imposed the pass-through of the actual fee increases that we were to incur. In your packet, you have a list of how the fees from Waste Management exist between 2020 and 2027, which is the remaining life of the contract. The proposal is to implement this pass-through. For instance, in 2020, it's a 60-cent per month increase, 60 cents in 2021, 60 cents in 2022, 60 cents in 23. 24 is a 90-cent increase, followed by two 60-cent increases. Finally, a 2027 increase of 90 cents, and that's per month. So in effect, this is revenue neutral for the city. It passes on exactly the increase that we receive from our hauler and passes it on to the customer.
Mayor? Yes. If I might comment, you weren't city manager at the time, Steve. It was between Jim Hock and Marty Shanahan, who's no longer apparently fit to be our city manager, who brought this deal home. They saved us, was it 40 million over the life of the contract?
It was over 50 million.
Over 50 million.
Marty?
Thank you, Marty.
It was a lot.
Thank you. And even then, we said that we would have to ultimately increase by these small increments. This is not a deep dive for this. We gave them some relief because apparently some are telling us we trended so horribly financially that we didn't have to charge them. That's how horribly we were doing. We were doing exactly the opposite. We were trending so well, and we continue to trend so well. Don't pick out just this 1 year and that other year. Like you said, let's talk about a 5-year trend.
Right.
And we were doing so well that we didn't increase the tax the first 2 or 3 years. We made that choice as a policy because we were doing so horribly financially.
Okay, so we have council memo number 719-19, an ordinance amending Chapter 14, municipal waste, Article 3, collection fee. It's recommended said ordinance be adopted.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman?
This will be my last vote for this evening, and I'm sorry I'll have to apologize. I do have to leave. My family has finally arrived. But before I vote here, it's easy to sit up here and explain and justify to yourself why you're raising all these taxes. But there has been no compromise whatsoever. It's one way or the highway. And that's very disheartening to me. I'm very sorry, taxpayers. I tried. Other people have tried well as well. So on that note, I hope you all have a happy new year, and I vote no.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next, we have public comments. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment?
Mary Beth Gannon, 903 Western. Every retiree in this town, Miss Reardon, I'm trying to talk, thank you. Every working family in this town is going to remember how each and every one of you voted tonight. Thank you to the Fiscal Four for coming tonight, even though we residents all knew that Mr. Dickinson, Miss Gavin, Mr. Mudrin, Miss Reardon, Mr. Turk would ram these tax increases through. You can say that you are not part of this Mudrin 5, but your actions speak louder than words. Your voting record says otherwise. And you sit there and talk about previous councils kicking the can. Well, excuse me, but you've been a council member for 30 years, so you've been part of that process.
Absolutely.
This is a union town, and as a fourth-generation union member, I can tell you that union people have long memories. They will remember how you voted tonight. Maybe you think in 2021 people are going to forget this. We won't. We will remember. We will remember that you were in favor of tax hikes instead of fiscal responsibility. Week after week, month after month, I have watched you make decisions that fly in the face of what the people want. We will remember at election time, and you need union votes to get elected. Thank you. Kathy Spieler again. I want to clarify a few things. First, we have 2 libraries. There's not just the one downtown. And secondly, I'm going to be a little blunt about this. So we had a gentleman who came and spoke last week, and he let everyone know that the attendance in the library downtown was not that high. But what we do have in the library downtown, and they're certainly welcome, and I'm glad that they're able to use it, but is a lot of homeless and panhandlers. Now, that unfortunately is scaring away. I have friends who go down there, ladies, and they're being followed from their cars. They're being hit on by these gentlemen. They're afraid to take their children to the washrooms at the downtown library. So I just want everyone to hear that loud and clear. There is a fear to go down there, and we're going to invest $10 million. I'm very saddened about that. Now, secondly, I want to say this is nothing against the homeless. I am part of the housing authority that's trying to help alleviate the homeless issue that we have. We just got a $400,000 grant to help those with disabilities under the age of 62 years old who are homeless or who are at risk of being homeless. So we're all trying to do our part to help. But I did want to explain the fear that goes along with the downtown library. Also, Mayor, you made a darn good point, and so did Terry Reardon. So I happen to be on Facebook quite a bit because I am disabled and I'm home, and I know Councilman Dickinson's always on there too. But this is something that someone wrote, and I shared it with some people up here on the Joliet page, and I'm not going to say his name, and I'm not going to repeat one of the words that he uses because it would be impolite. But he says, I have to ask just how uneducated is the Joliet City Council? Are they too uneducated to see that if passed, their gas tax will simply cause Joliet residents to buy gas in Crest Hill, Shorewood, New Lenox, Elwood, Plainfield, or Lockport, with neighboring towns in as many cases just being a simple matter of crossing the street to avoid this proposed gas tax. I have to ask, what are these council members thinking? Also keep in mind, if I go across the street to buy my gas, that's also where I'm going to pick up a bottle of milk or a loaf of bread or a cup of coffee, my morning paper. You get the idea. Not only won't Joliet be collecting the gas tax, they will actually be losing the sale taxes from other purchases. It's time for the city council to wake up. Again, these are not my words, but this is what's out there. And I actually copied about 20 comments on different pages of Joliet residents, Joliet taxpayers, people who vote, and they are really angry about this. I know it's very hard to get people into this council to speak. Tonight we got a lot more than we usually do. So you may not hear it here, but it's out there, and it's going to affect all of you in the next elections. And maybe you don't care. You know, maybe this is just for whatever agenda you have, it's going through. But I want you to know that there's a lot out there being said that you're not hearing. So, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would?
I've never been accused of having too much tact, and I guess it's not going to start tonight. But I want to thank you, Mayor, for answering my questions. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. Back in October, I went on a trip with some people from Orland Park, New Lenox. When they found out I was from Joliet, all they did was beat on me about what is going on in this council. They've told me they've had council wars, and you know, whether you admit it or not, there's council wars going on here. They've told me that Orland Park had them, New Lenox had them, and nobody benefited. Nothing, nothing. And all I'm going to tell you is grow up, get together, and work together for us. I appreciate you doing your job, but do your job for everybody instead of a power play and who is going to win. Thank you, and Happy New Year again.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Alicia Morales. I live at 1314 Core Street. I know this was very difficult for everybody. Nobody likes taxes, including myself. You guys have difficult choices, but I just want to clarify one thing, that we are not afraid to visit the Joliet East Library, okay? That's a misconception. Some people don't like to get out of their comfort zones and go to different parts of town, but I love going to the Joe Field area part of town, part of Joliet. I love going to Larkin Street, all parts of Joliet. There's no fear. So just, I want to say that no, people are not afraid to visit it's a beautiful library. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
It's been motioned and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
You don't oppose?
No.